Well, hey there. Thanks, as always, for watching. I really do appreciate it. Today, we are checking out the new Synergy Marshall JMP module. Now, I'm sure all you cats are hip to the Marshall Plexi. I mean, it literally epitomizes rock and roll, from Jimmy Page to Angus Young to Eric Clapton, Eric Johnson. I mean, so much rock and roll has happened on that amplifier. They set out to basically put that in a module, but also cover some more bases, because it's a two-channel module, which is great, but it also allows you to kind of go between, or not kind of, it allows you to go between the more 60s circuit, which would be, you know, I guess more vintage, maybe a little bit rounder, a little bit smoother, less aggressive for sure, but you can also cover the 70s circuit simply by throwing a switch. The 70s circuit is a little more aggressive. I sense a little bit more gain. It's a little bit tighter. Both circuits sound great, and it's awesome that you can actually just, you know, throw a switch and bang between the two. It's got all the same stuff that you would expect on the front. So you've got a volume 2 and a volume 1, bass, middle, treb, and a master. Now there's 2 channels, and they're identical channels. What you get as well as that is the aforementioned 60s and 70s circuit switch, but you also get a bright cap switch for volume 2 and volume 1, and we'll get into how those sound in the demo. But that's really cool, because obviously back in the day those switches didn't exist. You had to actually have somebody sort that out for you that's handy with a soldering iron. In this case, they're 3-position switches. Up is going to be a little bit more, down is going to be much more apparent, and we'll definitely get into that in the demo. One of my favorite things was, you know, obviously jumping volume 1 to volume 2 because of the way you can blend those 2 channels, because volume 2 is obviously the darker input, volume 1 is the brighter input, and being able to blend those is really, really cool. On top of now, you've got bright cap options for both channels, or I should say both inputs. So, you know, you could do like your top channel, dial that more kind of 60s, maybe rhythm tones, sounds great, like neck position, you know, Strat or Les Paul, but still, you know, has that vintage, you know, bark and crank when you hit like a back humbucker. But then dial the second channel for the more 70s thing and take solos with that, you know, go ahead and crank the gain, and, you know, and once again, dial it. The sky's kind of the limit on how you would dial that in. For this demo, I'm going to be using the Syn 1 preamp. It just sounded so great. The second I just plugged it in direct, straight into the old television set, I mean, there was just nothing about it that was making me angry. So you'll be hearing it through the Syn 1 with the onboard cab simulator, which is an analog cab sim. It really sounds great. I'm guessing it's maybe a 4x12 cab, whatever it is. It just really sounds great. So you're going to be hearing it basically straight out of my Syn 1 into my Apogee Quartet, straight to Pro Tools. So you know what? I'm going to stop yapping. And yeah, let's check this thing out. It is the Synergy Marshall JMP module. All right, let's check this thing out. It is the Synergy Marshall JMP module. All right, enough horrible sloppy playing and overthinking everything. Okay, since both channels are the same, what I tried to do is just kind of, throw that 60s and 70s switch for that circuit, which I think sounds amazing. Rolling these volumes up and down. I'll do the extremes for both. In a typical, JMP style circuit, as you keep cranking gain, you're going to want to back off lows. In my humble opinion, there's more lows there in this than maybe I've experienced on JMPs, but that's just my opinion. But it still holds true to me that you'll want to roll the bass off as you keep increasing gain. But let's do this. Let's just center this booger out, except for the master volume. I'm going to leave that where it is. Let's center the switches. Let's just be centered, people. Let's be present. Okay, so here's what we got now with everything at noon. Now, obviously, that might be a little bit, tubby. The first thing I would probably do is reach for that volume 2, because that's the darker input that can be blended with volume 1, and just maybe back that off. Now all that stringiness is coming back. I could throw the bright switch, bring in that bright switch. In the down position, it's much more apparent. On volume 1. Or I can go the other way with it. But, if I make it way more apparent in that down setting, then maybe I can start, if I'm wanting a little bit more body, start rolling that second volume, the darker input, into it. That's fatter. If I want it to get a little bit tighter, I can just roll some of the lows out. I like it about right there. And of course, we've got the mids. Just like those at noon, but it's to each his own. Let's go ahead and do the treble. Switch to neck position. So that's what's going on, bass, mid, treb. I threw the switch on this channel like Igor would. Now I'll throw the switch on the darker channel to let you guys hear what that adds. It's less apparent. In that up position, down position. quite a bit more apparent, but it also is bringing out a little bit more gain and a little bit more mids, but I still don't consider it being as toppy. Let me turn it down. So that's in the center. Up. A little more apparent, obviously. That's how it works with the with that gain or volume down. But in that down position, that's when it becomes a little bit more apparent as like a top end thing. As you get up towards noon, like I said, it feels like it's adding kind of high mids and gain. I found that honestly, I liked this either in the up position or in the neutral position, and I just took advantage of the volume 1. Because that allows me to take advantage of rolling in some, without creating much more gain until you start matching the front input gain, some body, and then I can adjust the bass accordingly. And then I've still got plenty of room to move in my treble and mids. Now what I'm going to do is just throw the, from the 60s, which is the more kind of round vintage, to the 70s, which is going to be more, I guess, it'll have more gain, maybe a little tighter, maybe a little more aggressive. Okay, so that's basically the channel. Now the fact that you can switch between the two channels, what I like to do is have this one set up a little bit maybe more vintage, and then go for the 70s thing on this channel, and maybe dial it with some more gain. So let me see what's going to happen here. So top channel. So that's cool, rhythm channel. Let's see what we can get going on this one. Okay, cool. That is the Synergy Marshall JMP module. I hope I've demoed it so that you guys, enough so that you guys can kind of hear how it sounds. If you've got any questions, go to the website, Synergy. and check things out there. But as always, I really appreciate you guys watching, and I will see you on the next one.